Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick, and we're back for part two of our discussion of the wide receivers, the countdown for the 2025 draft. Joined here by Jason Smith of Huddle It Up Films. Jason, how you doing?
Doing great, Ken. That was a fun first show, buddy. I hope everybody goes back and listens to it if this is their show.
We had only one difference in 10 through 7 in terms of who we had at those positions, which that never happens. Normally, we can only do 4 players in the first show because it's usually on most of these shows been like 7 different guys we've been talking about. And so this is not the case at all. So why don't you go through who were your 10, 9, 8, 7 guys, and then I'll give you mine.
Absolutely. I had Jalen Royals at 10, Jack Besh, which was our difference there at 9. I had Trey Harris at 8, Kyle Williams at 7. And we mentioned Jalen Nolan, talked about him. He is my 6th receiver.
Okay, and he's my number 9 guy. So that was the only difference we had. I had Royals at 10, Harris at 8, and Williams at 7, just like you did. We also talked a little bit about the Ravens situation. Maybe we want to go back to this because I think one of the central points, and we spent a little bit of time on this, was whether or not the Ravens might draft a wide receiver this year, even though the room seems very full and very talented with the 5 guys they have. But they might draft a receiver this year for one of 2 reasons. Number one is that they want to go to more 11 personnel with the unwinding of the tight end contracts after the 2025 season. So they're not going to have perfect efficiency getting back whoever they don't get. They have a very big difficulty in drafting a tight end this year. So it would have to be a drafted tight end next year to fill up that tight end room. I think it's actually kind of an unlikely exacta. The Ravens are likely to be playing more 11 in 26, and that might be something they're looking for in the 25 draft. Is who it would be a good slot receiver complement for Bateman and Flowers, who will both still be around, and how do they go forward with that? And then the other thing we talked about, to a fair degree, is whether or not the wide receiver position as a whole warrants the additional pick just because of the salary cap dollars you don't have to spend in free agency. And the Ravens have gone cheap, and cheap is not very cheap at wide receiver. DeAndre Hopkins is very reasonably priced. Obviously, if we go back a couple of years, Odell Beckham was not reasonably priced for the return on him. And if you want to go to the top end, you're looking at $30 and $35 million players. So, a good. I think it's one of the franchise building questions you need to answer. And I think you're absolutely right that we shouldn't be too shocked if the Ravens come up with a wide receiver in the first 2 or 3 rounds, even though the need seems to be towards the lower end of all their position groups.
I would be disappointed in a way because I want to see us fill other pressing needs. But you bring up a great point. It's look at the value of Rashad Bateman. What his contract is. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's like $5 million a year or something like that, right?
Yep.
For a number 2 receiver who put up, the stats that he did. I mean, we're paying Rashad Bateman what we paid Nelson Aguilar to be here, and basically what D-Hop is making now. So the expensive nature of the wide receiver positions, the guys we mentioned on that first show, if we can get any one of those guys in a reasonable range, they could be a piece for the future as Bateman's contract runs out. Maybe he's a $30 million guy, or maybe he gets hurt again and he's not, an option for us. And D-Hop's not going to be long for the team, and who knows what happens with Devontae Walker. I think we know what we have in Tylan Wallace. We'll see what happens with Zay Flowers, but you can't go wrong if you draft a starting wide receiver who deserves to be a starting wide receiver. And to back up your second point with, all 3 tight ends and Ricard being free agents after this year, the Ravens are going to have to make an effort to turn over that room while staying fiscally responsible with the contracts they're going to have to hand out to Linderbaum, Hamilton, among others. So a lot of factors in there, Ken.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of people give me crap about Isaiah Likely trading him, but they really need to unwind the contracts. They need to figure out if they can sign Isaiah Likely, but they don't have the rest of Isaiah Likely's future. They've got 1 year of him, and he's a guy who would have to be available at the right price. Bateman would not be somebody I would make available with 2 years left on his contract. I think he's too valuable to the Ravens. But I also think if you're wondering how do the Ravens get another first round draft pick in this draft, trading Bateman is the way. He's the most valuable second contract player in the among wide receivers right now, and I would say the entire NFL.
Right, he's a $20+ million guy. I wonder what it's valued at, playing for $5 million.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, so you got over 2 years, you have $30 or $35 million worth in projected value on a contract like that. What any free agent contract, any second contract period, never really has that kind of a value to it at the position, or really at any position, but certainly not at wide receiver. So you make or break your team with your guys on their first contract, and if at some point it came to fruition, if the Ravens were offered the number 19 pick in this draft for Rashad Bateman, it'd be a tough call. And I think the other guy who could be traded on draft night, not a sure thing, but not a zero probability either. I think it's possible Tyler Linderbaum could be traded. Now the reason is Tyler Linderbaum, they have to decide on the 5th-year option by May 2nd. And really they need to figure out if he can be signed long-term now by having a meeting in the minds and seeing if he's willing to play for what the Ravens are willing to pay. But they need to be fiscally responsible for him because he's not at the top of centers in terms of his pass blocking. And he does a lot of things well, very good player, but I'm not paying him Creed Humphrey money. I want him signed for, 4 years for $64 million, not at $18 million, not a set the market deal. And if that's what Linderbaum and his people want, then I wouldn't have a problem seeing him go, even though it would leave the Ravens very shorthanded this year.
What I would say on all that is something that gives me, confidence is like the same thing that makes you laugh, makes you cry. I love the way the Ravens do business. Mm-hmm. I feel like we are extremely lucky as Ravens fans. We don't realize it. Some of us don't realize it. I mean, a lot of us are Orioles fans or fans of other teams and other sports, NBA, NHL. The Ravens have done a great job of keeping their own. And they've done a really good job of knowing when to let go of people that they just can't keep. I personally think there's no way Linderbaum leaves unless, like you're saying, he just goes crazy with his it's a two-way street. But I think they want that continuity with Lamar in the center. Kyle Hamilton, obviously the same thing. I think they just give him what he deserves, which is top of market, whatever.
Yeah, he'll set the market. Yep.
And, with likely Ken, I kind of feel like, I mentioned this on the first show, that Lamar loves his tight ends, that they're willing to pay him, that basically take over the Mark Andrews contract. He can be, for that era, for this era. But basically what they paid Mark after his first contract, say they're willing to divvy that, put that money aside for Isaiah Likely in the year 2025. So, when it comes to Adafio Way and others, Travis Jones, this is the year, as we mentioned in the first show, to go get your Travis Jones replacement right now. It's going to be some tough calls, but I would say I would put a 50-50 chance on all three of those staying. And if you can't, like you mentioned, if you already know you can't sign Likely, or you already know you can't sign Linderbaum, then now would be the time. Like the NFL draft is like the trade deadline almost for baseball. Somebody said that to me, and I apologize who said that, and I can't think of who it was. It was Coach DC, I believe. Okay. Made that. This is the trade deadline for baseball right here, draft day.
So, give you a hypothetical here. The Ravens have had talks with Linderbaum, and he wants to at least match Creed Humphrey's contract and probably get more. And the Ravens say, look, we can't even give you the 5th-year option, because it would be $23.4 million. It would change the whole nature of the negotiation. So we have to sign you now or not at all. And he says, no, Creed Humphrey money is where I belong. Then the Ravens are offered the first pick of round 2 in exchange for Linderbaum after the first night of the draft. Would you pull the trigger or not?
You talking about pick 33?
Pick 33.
Brace yourself, guys. I apologize to whoever this offends, but yes, you take pick 33 for a center any day. No matter how much of a fan favorite he is or how great he is. I mean, if I had Creed Humphrey, I would trade him for pick 33. If you think that highly of him, Ken. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I haven't studied Creed. Okay, so I don't know, but I feel like center is the only position in the NFL that consistently gets help. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can make arguments for the other positions, but your center, as long as he can snap and he's smart and he can lead a line and call out blitzes, a lot of above the shoulder pads things. That's what I'm looking for in a center.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm with you, and I think if you look back at the trades the Ravens have made, they got less than that. Even though they got a first round pick as part of the package, they got less than that for Marquise Brown. They got less than that for Orlando Brown. I think the mid second round pick was really the value for Orlando Brown. I think a 33 is terrific value if they were to get. I don't think
Hey,
they
can
could
I
pass
offer
it
you a
up.
couple of sixth in there with you? I got them. We can offer you that. Sorry, kid, just making a joke there.
All right. So let's continue rolling along with this. We did talk a lot about the metrics involved. I think we'll hit those up on the individual receivers, but go back and listen to that first show if you didn't. A lot of stuff about the metrics for receivers and why those are important. I'll really be highlighting them both tonight and on the draft show. But let's hear your number 6 guy.
I've got my number 6 with Jalen Noel. So I think your number 6 might be up.
My number 6 is next, and I want to make sure I get this name correct. It's Elik Iomanor.
Manor. He says Manor.
Iomanor, right.
Manor, yeah.
Yeah. And let me go down and make sure I have the correct things. A lot of these guys, they sometimes do run together when you look at them. But Iomanor is a big X receiver, contested catch specialist who really needs a better quarterback. The Stanford quarterbacks and Ashton Daniels in particular had a crappy year. But 75.7 passer rating for all the Stanford quarterbacks. And the passer rating thrown to Iomanor was only 77.4. So that's the low point of what he's done. He's 6'2", 206, runs a 4.44 22 in June, so the age is good. Outstanding jumps, so he's got the fine athletic profile overall. In terms of receiving metrics, his ADOT is high at 14.2, and his contested catch percentage is quite high at 26.6%. So that held down some of his receiving metrics. So having a high contested catch percentage means he's been more of a bailout guy for Daniels and a guy that is the target of last resort. And a lot of those targets are lower quality targets where he's trying to make a play for the QB. And then his yak per reception is only 3.9, which is quite low. It's one of the lowest in the wide receiver group. I thought he was a good extended play target for Daniels. Very regularly hit coming back for the football, which really hurt his yak. Even though he had a good ADOT, we really saw him coming back for the football a lot towards the end of plays. If you kind of know this from watching Jackson play, I'm sure, but there are certain rules that the receivers have to follow in terms of closest receiver to that spot goes to the right sideline and comes back to the quarterback. And then there's a lot of rules breaking towards the middle of the field with Lamar Jackson because most quarterbacks are told not to throw there. Daniels would be wise not to throw there, for example. But Jackson can manipulate his upper body in ways that are different from his legs, and much like an alien is able to do things other quarterbacks just aren't able to do. So with Iomanor, it hurt him. He had a really good ability to contest for the deep ball, plays for the DPI well. I thought a guy who is not afraid to track the football, stop on his route, and let the defensive back run right through him, and even exaggerate that contact to a little bit, which is all good. Hands go up late at the catch point. That helps with the DPIs. You want to see the grab on the right sideline versus TCU. It was number 13 for TCU. I don't know who that is, but it was a defensive back over there. He takes some big hits on slants. He seems to be marked very regular in that Stanford offense, which contributed to that low yak per reception, along with the contested catches and the sticks catches he's making where he's coming back for the ball. Fantastic one-handed grab versus Syracuse for the TD, a big catch radius. He's a guy who has a big frame and able to deal with that. He does give you legitimate X characteristics in a lot of ways. He's a plus run blocker. I thought he did a good job of keeping his feet doing that. And so I liked him for the Ravens in that regard there. That's why I have him as high as I do. Drop rate is higher than you'd like. I don't see the Ravens selecting him, even if he falls all the way to 59, where I think he'll be taken if they waited any longer than that. I think he'd represent a little bit of value there and a ton of value at 91. So that's where I am on Iomanor.
Yeah, Manor, I guess it's like like a mansion. You know what I mean? Even though it looks like Manor. But yeah, I thought the same thing when I was like, man, I get real crazy with these pronunciations. Yeah, you know what, Ken? He is number 12 on my list. So this is our biggest. We finally got a difference. And for me, Ken, for me, it came back to he fights the ball too often and doesn't inspire confidence. spectacular catchability mixed with drops. I don't know what his drop percentage was, but
8.7.
Okay, because I went back and watched every target. There was a cut up on YouTube. It was
Yep.
just a TV copy, so you didn't get to see everything the defense was doing. But like, I wanted to see his hands. Go ahead, Dan.
The just the tape thing is
I
probably
think
the
I think that's what
those
it's
are
called.
fantastic. Those are just utterly great. I mean, it doesn't have to be all 22. If you're seeing every target, that's great. You can see it's not only that, it's every penalty is included in there. So there was a tight end, Gunnar Helm, I think, had a lot of problems with penalties this year at tight end, and so you picked up on all that. And so it's
you can see where they line up a lot, Ken.
Yep.
Whether these targets are coming in the end zone with like the safety creeping over the top of the dude, and he's just put in bad situations. So yeah, there's a lot to gather. So he was one of those guys that I had to go back and watch that because like I just wasn't getting the vibe that I saw from everybody else. So, admittedly, I think I'm lower on him than others. And that's despite the fact that he's got X receiver written all over him, like you said, Ken. And those are extremely valuable. 6'2", 206, 32 and 3/8 inch arms. I mean, so he's
long.
Very long, 4.44. That looks good. And I like his release off the line of scrimmage, Ken. That's the other thing. I don't see him against some of these big, professional press corners up at X. I think he's going to be able to hold his own from pretty early in his career and mix up his release package. Something that I like to look for with X is like, yeah, it's all good that you got the size, but can you get off the line? Do you have the play strength? Yes. Do you have the quickness, the moves? Yes. Okay, Ken.
That I was just going to say that the X receiver, like the X receiver that has really exceptional press beating characteristics, won't just be able to release against that guy. He'll actually be able to throw the press corner in the wrong direction to create separation.
Right. He's got the play strength for it. Right. So you see like Bateman does it with quickness, but there are other X receivers that do it just, but you want to put your hands on me. Yeah. Good luck. Here you go. With the length and strength. So I agree with everything you said. There's really nothing, I have a big disagreement with you. Oh, Ken, you said that I don't see it. It's the spectacular catchability mixed with the drops. And to me, when I look at him, I see somebody who fights the ball too often. Like it's just, he makes the catching look harder to me. And I'm trying to be very, very picky when it comes to hands, which is why a receiver we'll talk about later from TCU didn't make my top 10 either.
Oh, I know who that is. All right. So we move on to your number 5 guy.
Yeah, no, this is where I need to check myself, Ken, and I may be switching my 5 and my 4 before draft day. Okay. I just need to find the Gazumbas to do it because I've been looking at it and I'm trying to go on consensus, and my number 4 receiver I'm seeing pop into the first round on all these drafts. And I'm like, I don't see it from my number 4, but I could see it from my number 5 guy because he profiles to me as an X receiver. He played the X receiver. His name's Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. Love this guy. My positional favorite, Ken. He's got the stars around him on my board. 6'4", 214, 33 and an 1/8 inch arms. Okay, so he's tall. He's got a little muscle to him, and his arms are, there's guards in this class that would like to have his arm length. Ran a 4.47, which, Ken, at his size, to me, is good. Fast. I mean, we talked about Trey Harris, 4.54. Jaden Higgins, a 4.47. There's so much that I like about him. I'm just going to read my thing. The route running and natural wide receiver qualities stand out early. He is not only is he 6'4", but his cuts are nice. His salesmanship is nice. You see him run the entire route tree at Iowa State, which I love. Adjustments and ball tracking are a plus. In all bold, he can erase a bad throw with radius and catch through contact. So this Iowa State quarterback, not a bad player, but he's a chance taker, the quarterback. A throw behind him, a foot behind him, he just reaches back without breaking stride and gets it. Throwing the sidelines off. It's a pass that should have been interception. He's able to bat it down. He can erase a bad throw, which is extremely important. You're talking about drive changers, game changers, intercepted. It could have been intercepted, or you keep the chains moving. He does have some shiftiness. That shows up in his route running, but for Yak, he has some shiftiness. He looks equally comfortable lining up on either slide or in the slot. So you're talking about, to me, a truly positional, versatile wide receiver. Like X, Z, slot, you want to match them up. You want to find Ken, we know these teams like to play sides with their cornerbacks. And they cornerback A is always on the left, cornerback B is always on the right. Jaden Higgins can go attack whatever one you want for those guys and mismatch that. Play strength is on his side. I'm not saying it's great, but play strength is on his side. There's nuance and salesmanship in his routes. Hands again and again and again. Needs to vary his releases. Now, his releases are not as good as Iamana's. That's where I can see him getting jammed up at the NFL level. But all in all, there's just so much that I like about this guy that I really need to. He's number 39 overall on my board. I could see him going in the first as a shocker that nobody's talking about, because he's an X receiver who can run routes and has got, does all the things that I believe in him. So yeah, Jaden Higgins, maybe he'll be number 4 by the time draft day comes, but he's sitting at number 5, number 39 on my board overall.
Exact match again. Jaden Higgins at number 5, Iowa State. Couple things. 23 in December. So he had 2 years at Eastern Kentucky, then 2 years at Iowa State. He tested in everything at the combine. That is becoming so rare these days. You can bet that anything somebody doesn't test in, they're not very good at. So when you see guys who show up with a lower percentile rank, maybe be looking backwards at the history of wide receivers to determine that kind of thing, you probably are getting guys who would be better. Well, okay. I'm not sure this makes sense now that I'm hearing what I'm saying, but the guys who test it all, they honestly, they're the better of the group, even if they show up with a kind of a lower percentile ranking by today's standards. So that I like. His receiving metrics, the ones he really stood out: routes per target of 3.4. The Iowa State, more than anybody, they funneled their routes into these two guys. And by the way, that's where Charlie Kohler went, and he was Wilt Chamberlain in that offense, just getting fed in the post. 2.66 yards per route run is very good. A yak per reception of only 3.8 is very poor. I do blame some of that on the quarterback, Becht rather. But his drop percentage is excellent, only 2.2% this year, 3.0 career. So a guy who hangs on to the football when it's thrown to him. Quarterback rating was 106.9, which doesn't seem that great, but it's a 15-point bump to what Becht had overall at 91.3. Very poor yak production in 2024 is mediocre for his career. In terms of like what I'm seeing on tape in terms of the receiving, because a lot of the way I do analysis is trying to corroborate what I see in terms of on the tape, and a lot of what Jason describes very eloquently in terms of what he's talking about, and trying to see, does that really match the metrics, or is that something people say about him and it's not really backed up by the stats? So I thought he looks the ball into his hands as well as just about anybody. Doesn't catch the ball in his body. He'd be one of the guys who would single catch the ball, not double catch the ball like running backs sometimes do. But the looking the ball into your hands is very important to keep your drop rate low, not be worried about getting upfield. They still, it's not like he's terrible at that. He's suffered some, probably from a lot of not center of mass targets from Becht, frankly, that have kind of reduced some of his value as a receiver. But I think he can be a decent yak guy at the pro level. If I had a knock on him, he's been 50% or higher, by the way, on contested catches each of his 4 seasons. So I think that's a plus. The one knock I have on him is that deceleration is a real chore. You see this guy sit down as he gets to the top of the stem, try to decelerate, gives it away. We said this in the first show, but gives it away to the opposing quarterback with the hip drop. Also slows himself down, which is exactly what he's trying to do. It's just a Zay Flowers or the guys who are the smaller, stick their foot in the ground and go guys, rather than having to sink down deep into the chair. Those guys are giving away less, and they get more separation because of it. And that was a little bit of a problem for Higgins, is that separation. Not a guy who at his speed is going to be the beat the guy trailing across for that mid-range target, deep over a crossing route of really any length. From one side of the field to the other. A lot of the faster guys and the guys who cut quickly and the guys who have decent long speed are the guys who really win on those routes. And they're exceptional. They present themselves well to the quarterback. That's just not Higgins. It's the only knock I have on him. Otherwise, I think he tracks the ball very well. I think he's good. He's a X backup immediately for the Ravens. Route running is perfectly fine. Otherwise, he is a decent combination of a good hitch and good deep qualities that he can be matched up single on. Virtually played no special teams in college. if he were to get slot play, it would duplicate what they get from a bigger slot like Andrews or Likely. So I don't think that's the greatest fit with the Ravens. So while I really like him, and I think if he dropped to 59, he would represent value, I don't know that the Ravens would even take him there. It would definitely depend on what other needs they needed to fill at that exact spot.
For sure. And we went over that a lot. So I don't want to rehash that discussion. But yeah, I think I would come back with asking you this. Would you train him at X, or would you say, look, we got D Hop that we could do that with? Maybe we let him learn Z and slot. Maybe we let him learn Zay's role, and let him be a backup there, because I see like DeAndre Hopkins not being able to do Zay things. I'd like to take the opposite approach.
Right.
D-Hop can do Bateman things, but not Zay things. So maybe Higgins is a bigger version. Yeah, he can't sit in the chair like Zay can, but he can run the routes. He does it with deception, as I mentioned in my notes. But yeah, what do you think about that idea?
I don't have a problem putting him in the slot. I don't really see him as an obvious fit at Z. One of the things you mentioned in the first show was that Z targets often go on the deep crosses, and that's just at his kind of speed and cutting ability. And he's too easy to match at the top of the stem to make those routes good. I mean, he's box out capability. He's not like he doesn't present a big target to the quarterback. It's just he's not going to have a lot of separation on those routes that you'd really like to see.
Yeah, I figured that'd be a fun question.
Okay. All right, so let's see. Higgins was both of our number 5 guys, so we're your number 4 guy. I'd be shocked if we didn't have the same top 4. I wonder if we have them in the same order.
Yeah, it's my turn, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, so I apologize to this guy, but I just got to admit, I'm very bored. He bores me. And I know he has big fans out there, but it's Emeka Egbuka of Ohio State. If he's your number 1, Ken, it's nothing insulting towards you. I mean, he's the all-time Ohio State receptions leader. It's a guy that is very, I would say he has some true flexibility in what you can ask him to do. I think you could ask him to do a little bit of everything, but I think that his ultimate landing spot in the pros is as a slot, and that bothers me. He did not run at the combine. Like you said before, indication that he didn't want to run. I don't really go by pro day times because I like the same control group with my arm length and all that other stuff. So, he comes off to me as a 4.48 to 4.5 guy. I don't know. Would be my guess. If he ran, he does have good size, 6'1", 202. But he was consistently the number 2, the bridesmaid at Ohio State. You're talking about Jeremiah Smith this year. Harrison last year. Thanks, Ken. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. He was always the number 2. So that's why he stayed till his age 23 season. He'll be 23 this year, or maybe he already turned 23, because he was never good enough to be the number 1 there, which is no shame. It's Ohio State. But he is a more polished route runner than most people in the draft. But one of the things that holds me down on him, Ken, is as precise as his routes are, he doesn't come off as extremely quick or fast. So there's not a ton of separation at the college level. And I don't think that that's going to get any better, obviously, at the pros. That doesn't get easier at the pros. But I like his natural qualities as a receiver, is what a term I use too often. Ball tracking, body control, strength through the catch. Like, he's a natural professional wide receiver who will be a very good slot for some team. Might go in the first round. I've seen him go to Houston to play with his old buddy C.J. Stroud a lot. I've seen him mock to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But to me, he's wide receiver 4. And as I said with Higgins, I might get the gumption to drop him to 5 if I can swallow that.
All right. Look, it's a solid evaluation. These top 4 guys, they're all outstanding for their own reasons. And I could understand why you'd have Egbuka a little lower. I have him at number 2. And I've got my reasons for it, but there are some shortcomings that are apparent in what he does well, even. So you mentioned his measurables. A 4.45 pro day reading was what I have for him.
Okay.
Again, I jaundiced eye, so 4.48 to 4.50 might be right, because you don't have the good controlled measurements like that. By the way, had James Ogden on to do the offensive tackle show, and he was noting that the arm length measurements differ
all over the place,
an inch. It's unbelievable. I mean,
and in both directions, Ken. In both directions. Yeah, I always think here's what I wanted to jump in and interrupt with when James was on. I feel like the Senior Bowl is generous with their measurements because they want people to come there. It's a recruiting thing for Jim Nagy and his group. So like the Senior Bowl measurements, I never put any stock into because I think they're going to measure you long, they're going to time you great. So 2 cents there.
Okay, combine rules. We got it. All right, so let's get back to Ibuka here. In terms of the receiving metrics, routes per target were at 3.8. So a lot of that Ohio State offense, as good as it was, did run through him. Yards per route run at 2.51. His ADOT was really short at 7.9. That's not something I realized, but a lot of the throws were shorter to him. Just seeing Ohio State play a few times before you really get into every target looked at for Ibuka during this process, you really think of a guy who's a significant deep threat. Would have a pretty significant ADOT, but he caught some balls behind the line of scrimmage. He caught a lot of balls between 0 and 9. So, you have a mix of stuff. Yak per reception was just average. QBR of 121.2. Career it's 124.5. Seems like a great number, but Will Howard and Ohio State, the rest of the Ohio State quarterbacks threw for a total 117.8 quarterback rating. So here's what I would say about that. That's not a lot to beat the spread by, but it's also at a very high level, number one. And number two is Ohio State is consistently able to draft a great offensive line and to draft other great receivers who you are effectively competing with for the beating the spread characteristic of that passer rating. So I think that was a part of that. I don't mind at all where he is relative to Will Howard overall in terms of what he did. And in some sense, with the amount they fed him the football, it would be hard for him to be a lot different from Will Howard. So it's just too big a contribution to the total. You mentioned he's a very polished route runner. Probably has more tools in the kit than anyone in this draft coming out of school. And a lot of time to practice his craft at Ohio State. And I'm sure very good coaching there. What I'll say about that is when it's a pass rusher or a wide receiver in particular, I don't like that because it's usually something that means he has less to grow into in the NFL level. Is that, if you already know every trick in the book, how are you going to get better at that? So it is a problem. You can't project a lot more improvement. That said, he's got some fantastic stats at Ohio State to continue on. His bread and butter is the crossing route. Limited vertical targeting, as it turned out in 2024. But when he crosses, he presents very well, and Howard hit him well on those plays. And unlike the receiver we just talked about, number 5 guy, Jaden Higgins, right?
Yes.
Yeah, where he's big and a little bit sinks a little bit low, gives it away at the top of the stem more. Ibuka is a guy who gets ahead and stays ahead.
Smooth.
On the crossing route. Yeah. And you really like to see that. Most of experience to date has been, he has had a lot of experience in the slot so far. He's only had 25.2% wide snaps. So it does question whether or not he could move to be an X receiver at the NFL level or maybe a Z. Seems like Z would make sense based on the expectations of the positions for deep over and crossers. Might be a reasonable place. He could do the same in the slot, of course, but the real valuable play you'd have him at that opposite the boot for a 3-level play where he's the middle of the 3 levels that you're throwing to. So you have a go route on that right sideline on a boot right, Zobach left, naked boot right. Okay, you got usually a tight end who chips that defensive end and goes out on a level 0 target or a level right at the line of scrimmage. Then you got a crossing route from the slot on the other side, and then you have a go route on the same side that you're trying to get 3 levels, and you look at those targets from 3 to 2 to 1, and you ideally you want to get as many 3s and 2s as possible. 3 is often not available, or not the quarterback doesn't like it as much, but the 2, if the 2 is open consistently, that's bread and butter offensive football to be able to
right. And if he's not, then the one's got he can make a sandwich before he turns and runs with the ball. He's got so much space. Exactly. So if you're
if they try and bracket the level 2 guy, yeah,
right. So if your 2 is doing his job and getting the proper depth, like you're talking about, it really is the key to that because a go route's a go route.
Yeah. All right.
Ken, I love your analysis of Ibuka. I just want to say, lastly, I know why people like him. I feel like the floor with Ibuka is one of the highest floor. Probably, I want to like, I'm looking at my list of receivers, the highest floor, I'm going to say, of any receiver in the draft. I know what he can do. He's good. He's got pro written all over him. When you start going through others' scouting reports, you start to learn about high character guy, unselfish, never complained about not being the guy, stuff like that. That tells me that he knows what it's like to be a pro and play for Ohio State. So I love his floor. Safe player. I think guess I'm just guilty of wanting some kind of traitsy thing that is going to make him be able to be a difference maker at receiver instead of a complementary piece like a Juju Smith-Schuster. Say, I could see him taking a Juju type career path with Antonio Brown. He's awesome on his own. No, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, maybe the Ravens have the other receivers, at least for his first couple of years. Ibuka is completely ready to step into an NFL offense. I think we'd agree on day one, he starts immediately for you. He better, because he's going to be a first round pick. He's returned 19 punts over the last 3 seasons. The one thing I really didn't like about him at Ohio State, which obviously runs the football a lot, has positive game script going in their direction in a lot of closeout situations. Ibuka did not do a lot of run blocking and didn't do it well. So he's not a guy that I would look to for that. He better learn how to do it because he's got the body for it. Not a reason why he shouldn't be okay at it at the NFL level, but so far didn't really do it at Ohio State. This is the interesting thing I could see happening with Ibuka or Golden at 27 is if the last of the big 4 wide receivers, and I'm not including Higgins in this group, so it's just the big 4 that we both had clearly in round 1. Okay. And you're saying maybe Ibuka drops to round 2 and I think Higgins is probably going to be a round 2 guy. Anyway, if the last of the big 4 guys is on the board and it's only one of them at 27, I think it presents the Ravens with an outstanding trade back opportunity. I think it's just the kind of thing that they would look to pick up value and look to not just get equivalent JJ value, which is usually excellent because JJ value is highly skewed and the team that's trading up pays a big premium. But if they might even get 10% or 20% more JJ value by forcing a team to trade up for the last wide receiver. And since the Ravens don't need that, don't absolutely need that, I think it would be a great move for them to do it.
Would you trade with the Browns to give them a shot at their franchise quarterback if, say, Jalen Milroe was on the board, or pick a quarterback that you like?
Or Shadur is still on the board.
Right. Like, but I'm saying maybe the most threatening quarterback to Ken as an opponent.
Okay.
Like you don't want the Browns to get this guy. Would you trade back in a scenario like that to give them the guy that you don't want?
Browns have an amazing capacity to blow picks. The Ravens have beaten them on a couple of nice picks like the Nada pick and potentially the Voorhees pick, although we'll see how that works out. But it was a nothing for something trade, in the case of the.
If you're looking for a better way to unwind, focus, or even get a good night's sleep, listen up. Let me tell you about Mood, the online cannabis company that's changing the game when it comes to functional gummies. They've crafted a whole line of federally legal THC blends designed to help with everything from stress to sleep to mental clarity and even some spicier needs if you're into that. Now, what makes Mood different? They go beyond just THC. They pair it with herbs and adaptogens to create targeted effects that you won't find in any other dispensary. And every gummy is made with pesticide-free, small farm American cannabis, so you're getting quality that you can trust. I've tried their sleep gummies, and let me tell you, takes about 15 minutes, and I'm out cold, no grogginess, no weird side effects, getting some of the best sleep I've gotten in my life when I take one of these gummies. And if you need a mood boost, there are Epic Euphoria gummies, game changers. And right now, Mood is giving listeners 20% off their first order by using the promo code RAVENS at checkout. So head on over to mood.com, find the perfect gummy for whatever life throws your way, and don't forget to use the promo code RAVENS to save 20%.
Voorhees trade. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem letting the Browns draft, basically resetting the draft. It would have to be because part of the trade would probably have to be the 2026 number 1 pick for the Browns if they're moving back to the first round. I don't think I have a problem with it right away.
Right. That was a question I asked today. I asked Alec today. But yeah, if they want to trade back to get their quarterback, mean, that's at least the equivalent of their 3rd round pick this year, which would be like 65 if they have one,
Oh,
right?
I think you start this discussion with next year's
First.
number 1 plus some lower pick this year, and the Browns' number 1 pick could be a top 6 or 7.
Well, you
pick.
definitely do it. There's
Yeah.
no way then. Yeah.
And this would be like trading back into the first with Bowler. And admittedly, the Ravens situation was a little different because they were still thought to be a pretty good football team in that at the beginning of that 2003 draft. But they traded their number 1 overall pick to move back into the
The Browns can have their quarterback, if I can have a top 5 pick next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm with it. Yeah. Okay. So I think that takes us through Abuka. Let's see. And he was my number 2 guy. So my number 4 guy is next. And that is Luther Burden of Missouri. Now I know you probably love this guy. Where'd you have him, by the way? I had him at 4.
Number 3, and only for what it's worth, 3 spots overall ahead of Abuka. So I have Abuka at 33 on my board. I have Burden at 30. I pushed the wide receivers down a little bit on my Raven-centric board, Ken, for reasons that we've gone all over about. So I love him. If we needed a receiver, both Abuka and Burden would be in the teens probably in this draft.
Okay, so Burden did not have the greatest year this last year, but there are a lot of things to like about him. He is a fast, well-proportioned receiver. Very, very dangerous after the catch. And one of the guys that didn't show up, by the way, that great this year, but he has been in his career. We'll talk about a little bit of the metrics that support that. His receiving metrics, nothing really stood out except for routes per target. So as Missouri was still feeding him the football a lot at one target every 3.6 routes, but his ADOT was low at 9.1. And again, they're feeding him the football. They're trying to let him make plays after the catch. His yak did not really work out too great at 6.1, very average. His contested target percentage is very low. And that's, again, a function of a lot of throws behind the line of scrimmage where you never get a contested catch basically behind the line of scrimmage. You don't usually get them at certain other places on the field, but where you get them more often than not is on deeper balls and where there's a chance of any sort of bracket coverage or a man coverage down the sideline. You get more likely a contested catch. Nothing else really stood out. He had good health. He played 19% fewer snaps, and he took a big step back in terms of targets and receptions in 2024. So if you're a Burden hater, I'm just going to get that out of the way right away. But I think there's a lot of other reasons still to love him. From a receiving standpoint, this really where it hits home for me. 30 missed tackles forced in just 61 receptions. That's 0.49. Now, the average is something like I said earlier, maybe 0.13, 0.15 for a wide receiver. So he's almost 3.5 times as high as
it doesn't match up with his yak. Like, how can you break 30 tackles and not have that yak? I don't get that.
Well, I think he broke a lot of tackles behind the line of scrimmage, frankly. A lot of downhill stuff where, I always say there's missed tackles and there's missed tackles. So he might have caused some missed tackles, which still got him retracked, but he got out of he slipped his foot out of
it. If you catch it at the -2 and you get a 2-yard gain, that counts as 4 yards of yak, right?
That's
You're not going from 0 to 2, right?
No, it's
like that's that. When you said that yak number, I had the 30 broken tackles here, but I would have never guessed. I would have been jaw on the floor with the yak number.
Yeah, no, it's not that good, honestly. But he's been better in the past. Okay, what to say? He's very good on contested catches. He has a focus on him that has led to a lot of interceptions in the last 3 seasons. 9 interceptions on balls thrown his way in 3 seasons. Now, he's had a lot of touchdowns during that time too, but that's been something that's held down his quarterback rating throwing to him. Gadgetry really holds down his ADOT, but he's a legitimate threat down the field. It's not like he can't run those routes. If he's a guy, no problem running the deep over. If you want him to do that, it's just one of many things he can do for you. And Zay Flowers, frankly, is miscast a lot for the Ravens in terms of probably doing more gadgetry than most analysts are really comfortable with because he's the best guy at that also. But where you really want Zay Flowers is when some other receiver is trying to catch up to him running across the field and presenting to Lamar. And it's unfortunate when you don't get that. So anyway, he's been an outstanding weapon on gadget plays. He ran 9 times for 115 yards this last year, 12.8 per carry. Frequently used on jet toss, wide receiver screen plays. So you'll see a lot of that in his tape. For the Ravens, I think he resets the receiver room with a blue chip prospect. He could be part of a fresh legs offense, gadgetry. And if you look forward to either 2025 or 26, when the tight end room might shift around. Devastating 11 sets as you move forward. If they selected him at 27, which is the only place they could possibly get him, I think it is a bet on higher relative wide receiver salaries in the coming years rather than anything else. I think that you can explain it completely in that regard. So it'll be an analytics-driven roster building decision that Luther Burden is a receiver that's going to provide you a ton of value, and I think he will, while coming at a relatively low cost for 5 years. Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to beat that to death because we talked about it. Receivers are expensive. You get yourself a $30 million receiver at pick 27 in the draft where everybody's focusing in on other positions. You take it. It just depends on what you feel like Luther Burden is at the pro level. And the Ravens will say, hey, we had him number 1 on our board. And he was, in the wide receiver board. We took him at 27. And just to give context, he's 6 foot tall, 206. So his measurements aren't dissimilar to Ibuka, who's 6'1", 202. So 6'1", 202, Burden 6 foot 206 at the combine. Go ahead, Ken.
Play style more like AJ Brown, though, in terms of built like a running back. Really, he's not.
Yeah, that's
quite
where I was going with
pounds,
it.
but yeah,
exactly. That's where I was going with it. Like even though his height weight is similar to Ibuka, his play style and his build it's like in his legs. My first note was RB build. Running back build with Luther Burden, and it shows up in his broken tackles. As you mentioned, Ken, it was tracked at 30 broken tackles last year. It just consistently shows up on tape because, quite frankly, he gets a lot of chances at it. But aside from everything you said, I think he gives you a plus skill of body control consistently shows up, not just in his, making you miss and powering over, but it's the adjustment to the ball and his hands downfield. There are some targets that he's gotten. And I went back and watched 2 games of 2023 because I had heard that his 2023 tape was better than this year. And you can see it. Like, how did he see that ball? How did he catch that ball? He has those kind of like natural ball tracking skills and the body control to not only see it, but do something about it. I said his adjustments to the ball is NFL ready. He doesn't look quick or fast all the time, but he did run a 4.41. Sturdy, steady center of gravity, plays with an attitude, Ken. Like the yak seems to mean something to him. It's kind of in his personality. It's not just, oh, well, I'm going to make this guy miss and go out of bounds. He's got a little bit of attitude to him where it's part of his makeup as a football player. Saw him working the slot a lot. He's the type of wide receiver that you would worry about getting open versus good man cornerbacks, but can bust zone and can take the gadget cut touches from Zay right away. So you don't want Zay getting hurt in the Browns game in Week 18 on a little pass like he was this past year. Luther Burden is built to take those kind of gadget touches with you. I don't know what Zay's play speed was or combine 40 was like. I think Zay is a faster player than Burden, despite what their 40s may say. But Luther Burden is he's not going to have to duck contact from a safety all the time. If he's got a good angle, he can take that guy on and put the hurting on him, which I like for a guy. If your safety is going to have to come up and support and cover, and he's going to play 100% of the snaps and, be physical with receivers and make tackles. And I got this guy, Luther Burden, who's only going to touch the ball 3 or 4 times today. I like to have Luther Burden make that guy pay for trying to tackle him.
Right.
And he brings that kind of attitude towards the game. So yeah, my notes are exactly similar to yours. I have them right there with Ibuka. And if we did take him with 27, it would be a smile on my face. I would probably be mad that we passed on Malachi Starks or some other player that I really love. But at the same time, I'd be like, you know what? Luther Burden is built for the AFC North. And we just got ourselves somebody that we could back up at any position once he learns the offense. I could see him at X. I could see him at Z. He can work the slide. He can take the gadget touches. We can throw it to him downfield and not feel bad about it. So I think he's a complete receiver. My biggest bugaboo with him is I don't see him as a separation guy who my number 2 guy is.
All right. So we'll move on. Let's see. Is your number 3 guy was Burden, right?
Yes, sir.
So I guess I get to introduce the guy who probably is your number 2 guy. I would guess is Matthew Golden of Texas is my number 3 guy.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So let's talk about him. I'll get right down to his notes on him. One of the most sudden and dangerous vertical receivers in college football is my one one line tagline on him. 5'11", 191, ran a 4.29.40, 22 in August. Got no other testing, and frankly, he doesn't need it. You can see it all on tape in terms of who he is as a receiver. In terms of his metrics, his yards per target was outstanding at 11.9, one of the best in the entire class. Surprisingly, only was targeted once every 5.7 routes. Very unusual, but that Texas offense has a lot of very high quality receiving targets with, I guess Gunnar Helm and
Isaiah Bond.
Yeah, Isaiah Bond, of course. So they got other choices anyway for that. Yards per route run was 2.1. ADOT of 13.5 was fairly high, and his quarterback rating was 120.9, which is excellent. Even the Texas quarterbacks, as good as they were at 102.6 in aggregate. So he beat the spread by a considerable amount. He's one of the guys that is very effective combination of the hitch and vertical routes. So he makes a lot of hay coming back for the football, but he also caught 9 of 13 verticals by selling hitches, 9 of 13 verticals for 349 yards. That's 26.9 yards per target on vertical throws. So that will get the job done. Has a very high level of sideline awareness. Play after play after play. Go up, get football 1 foot inbounds, and sometimes not even take a hit. But he's very good at toe tapping. There were lots of attempts to get him the ball on the edge quickly that were an extension of the running game. And I would say we're largely unsuccessful. He didn't have a particularly great yak season at 5.2. They tried to almost force that too much, but they're playing like a spread run offense, if you want to think of it that way. They want to create more room for the running backs, and they want to get the ball out to their big playmakers as often as they can on the edge. Sometimes it was just a straight step back, try and beat one guy. They don't even set up a wide receiver screen on that side, and sometimes they did. And whatever they did, it just was not particularly effective in doing that. He did not have a single run in 2024, which kind of surprised me that a receiver as his caliber wouldn't be, in jet motion and get a run at some point. As far as I can tell previously, he never had a run either in his career. So he's a receiver. He's not a gadget player. The tape has every target and touch for him, including his returns as well, which are impressive. He returned kicks in all 3 seasons. He never returned punts in college, but he did have 2 kickoff return TDs for Houston in 2023. You can probably find those, but all I could see was his Texas ones. He has some good KORs for Texas as well. He's not a great threat after the catch. I mentioned his yak was a little lower, but he only had 8 missed tackles, which is 0.14, very average missed tackle rate, and an average yak per reception rate kind of fit together. The Ravens will not get a shot at him at number 27. I don't see any way. I think he's taken before then.
Me too.
So it's kind of a moot point in terms of what they might do with the thing. But I think the most likely combination is either Burden or Ibuka still available at 27 as the last receiver possible trade down.
I agree, because Matthew Golden has, part of the reason I have him at number 2 is he has qualities that are rare among college players, and it's the fact that his route running is just he's quick and sudden with it, and you can see him doing it at the college level effectively. Like it's so hard. When we talked about Trey Harris running the same 3 routes, and it's not fair to Trey, but you got to project. Guys got to believe. Somebody's got to believe. Kyle Williams and Jalen Royals, same type of thing. Sometimes you got to believe. With Golden, you see him running all this intermediate stuff. So yeah, he does get the quick screens. He does get the go balls. You see him on the kick returns, which gives you an idea of his change of direction. But you see him on all kinds of he's got the advanced route running chops, backed up by his the 4.2940 was, I think, tremendously helpful for him, Ken. Somebody said, hey, you don't play to a 4.29. They said this to him on Twitter, and he said, I wasn't asked to. And I think that was an excellent answer. And if you saw every touch, you know what he meant by that, Ken. He wasn't asked to. He wasn't really asked to take the top off and be an explosive guy. He, in fact, the second note that I had on him after kick returns and screen touches is I like his hands and the way he sells and mixes speeds in his routes. So he's one of those guys who really mixes his speeds, Ken. He doesn't have to go full speed all the time. to get open. He can set you up with a move, make you
Great
think,
point.
lull you to sleep. I would say the only thing I'm going to knock him for, I actually wrote no play strength. I don't, like I wouldn't trust him contested catches in the NFL, or, I would like, it made me scared, nervous that they had him so many with these gadget touches and the kick returns, because I don't want Matthew Golden getting beat up. If I had him on the Ravens, he would be your Zay Flowers. He would be your Zay Flowers backup, maybe future replacement. I agree with you, Ken, that I think he'll be gone before the Ravens pick, that there is because of the lack of projection needed in his route running and the fact that he ran a 4.29, I think that there's a better chance that Burden or Ibuka would be available. And Golden is my wide receiver too, as you mentioned. I have him all the way up at number 13 on my board. So non-quarterbacks, that is, as you know. So 13th position player available. Better.
All right. Great stuff there. Yeah. Well, he did have a pretty good contested catch here this last year, and it was a fairly large number of targets. Let me get that information up in front of me again. But
it's surprising, isn't it? Like
11 of 18. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So, but he hadn't been particularly great before that, like 6 of 18 career or something before then. So, good selection. So let's see. Have we already gone through your number 2 guy? Was who?
Yeah, it's Golden, and I think we just have the number 1 left.
Let's
Maybe
go.
I'm wrong.
You get to introduce him.
All right. So he doesn't like going by Tet, apparently. Tetaroa McMillan, Arizona, 6'4", 219, 219 pounds. What stands out to you is his catch radius. I think that anybody who's dabbled in the draft will see the way that he's able to catch the ball out in front when he wants to. The ball disappears in his hand. This guy is a freak at the catch point, and if you go back and watch his 2023 tape, it's some of the most ridiculous type highlights that you'll see. But what I that's not enough for me, Ken. I think what I like about him is that his lateral movement is underrated. He can get side to side. His hips are pretty darn good. Incredibly smooth, wide catch radius, ball disappears, tracks and high point at an NFL plus level. He's not going to be a huge tackle breaker, but his field vision and feel for the game look good, and he can make a guy miss in open areas. So that's the way I would describe it. He can make the first guy miss because he sees it quickly, and he's got just enough wiggle to make him miss. But of course, he's not a fast guy. He did not run at the combine. I would put him in if you think he's going to make it in the league, he is a Mike Evans, maybe a T. Higgins type. That's the type of receiver that you're getting with Tetaroa and McMillan. So yeah, the ability to play X, to bail your quarterback out, the soft hands. I think sometimes after his 2023, that 2024, quite honestly, I don't know if he was as engaged as he should have been at times, but again, this is me being a mind reader, and I would not say that to his face, so I shouldn't be saying that on the pod. But yeah, I feel like his 2023, he could have stood on that and come out in the draft and still probably been the first receiver drafted.
All right, outstanding stuff. What else do I have to say about him? Didn't have any other testing metrics other than a 4.55 at his pro day. So we don't really know where that is, but he's still number 1 on my list. He's got a lot of positive characteristics. Start with the receiving metrics. 10.1 yards per target is good. Routes per target of 3.5. So a lot of the Arizona offense, including a bunch of bailout throws, were going to McMillan. That dragged down his stats, no doubt about it.
Right.
Yards per route run were at 2.87. Excellent. 8 out of 13.7 is very good. His yak was kind of sucky at 5.1, just average, I guess I would say. Contested target percentage was 23.1%. So he's getting a lot of more tough targets than some other receivers are getting because of the Arizona situation. Arizona's QBs overall had an 81.7 passer rating, which is not very good. And he had a QBR throwing to him of 105.8, which is quite good. And obviously he's beating the spread by a lot. He's got 1 career carry, so he's not a gadget guy. He's not a jet motion guy. Has the size to be a good run blocker. What I'd say is if he comes to the Ravens, he's going to learn how to run block, and he's going to have his playing time closely incentivized with a linkage to run blocking effort.
And peer pressure too, because you can bet with Lamar and Derrick Henry, all it takes is one time on tape in that film room when they're watching
the guy I want to be responsible for that, the guy I want to be the Nazi of that in the room is a guy who hasn't been a particularly good run blocker in recent years. That's D-Hop. He should be coming into that room. First of all, everybody's going to respect the guy. And if he starts run blocking like he hasn't the last few years, because he's still got the frame to do it, still can keep his feet, then he should keep anybody else in line, whether it's, Wallace doesn't need to be kept in line, but Bateman or any of the other players that are out there to be kept in line. And yeah, Lamar will do it too. I mean, Lamar certainly can say things at any point. Monken can say things at any point.
Yeah, you get Lamar hit one time, because you were half stepping and see what happens. Like you're saying, from the coaching standpoint too, to hold him accountable.
Yeah. But he is a guy who probably needs that extra kick in the ass as a run blocker. As a receiver, I'm going to say a few things. He was not very effective on deep routes in 2024. He caught just 4 of 18 balls with 1 touchdown. There's a lack of real separation speed there. And it's not like I don't trust him on most balls where he's singled up. Some of it, in fact, was that because he's so significant to Arizona's offense, that he's getting more of the safety help over the top.
Yes.
So deep balls are going to be more difficult for him. So we agree on that. He does have a bread and butter hitch and slant. Both of those, you'd expect that out of a guy like him, a big X receiver, basically a guy who can certainly use some of that space budget coming across and presenting himself to the quarterback on the slant, and also coming back on the hitch route. Good sideline skills. I think he's good in 2 ways. He's good on the toe tap, and that is always pretty to see, and you like it. He's also subtly good in his route running down the sideline, that I think he creates space by kind of forcing a corner to the inside. Unfortunately, with Arizona's quarterback, they didn't make that pay off every time. But he is somebody who can create space for you, isn't going to get bullied. Ike Taylor or Marlon Humphrey or Chris McAllister on the Ravens previously, or guys who would bully people towards the sidelines. I don't see McMillan as being a guy who would fall victim to that too often. He's got a little bit of wiggle at the top of the stem, but it's very limited by his physique. And again, we're talking about the hip sinking thing. But when he needs to sit in the chair, he's not only slowing himself down, he's also giving it away to the corner. So that's, he has difficulty punishing opponents, I think, on double moves because of that. But he still, has some ability to get deep, and I think he'll be able to use that.
Hey, I just want to say, when that's your issue, it's because you're 6'4".
Yep.
You have to make them pay with your catch radius, your play strength to catch the ball out in front, and not let them come over the back and swat the ball through your hands. So, it's not a quality that smaller receivers can do as well as him. He uses his size when he's right. So, yeah.
He is outstanding with that, by the way. His contested catches, he caught 18 out of 30. First of all, it's a ton of total contested catch targets. Of 30 was 23.1% of the total. But there are a lot of those. Some of them were thrown up short. Some were thrown up medium, but they were bailout targets a lot of the time for the Arizona quarterback there. He also had 4 interceptions thrown in his direction. I did not go back to check each of those 4 to see, hey, did he miss an opportunity to defend against an interception, or was this his fault because he tipped the ball? That's the kind of thing that the Ravens will get into, and they'll
I saw 2, and I didn't see any I'm not going to bring up another player's name, but I didn't fault him.
Okay. All right, very good. 29 missed tackles forced on 84 catches is outstanding, but that didn't really show up in his yak total. So I think you were kind of bothered by a
make a guy miss, like a specific. He can make that guy miss, but that's about it.
All right. So another guy, the Ravens, no way in hell will they see him at number 27. He'll be gone long before that.
Yeah.
I tell you one thing, he would be great with Lamar on extended plays.
He's used to it. That Arizona quarterback was good extend plays, and of course wasn't nearly as good of a thrower, an improv guy as Lamar. But the offense that McMillan was in looked kind of chaotic. So when Lamar's doing his thing and the guards are getting beat off the snap, and you need to say, hey, forget about it. Somebody, McMillan can do that kind of thing. So I like the fit. I think he's getting a little bit of a bad rep in the draft because everybody loves separation. Everybody loves a guy who can separate, and you can't rely on contested catches at the NFL level. To me, he's one of those guys that is just superior at it, and I don't think that like I said, I think his lateral movement was the first thing I said is better than people are giving him credit for in this draft. Is it great? Of course not. But I think it's good for his size.
All right, outstanding stuff. Great discussion here. Now, we're kind of short on time, but let's each name 2 or 3 honorable mentions, just one at a time, and then just if you could give us just one thing you really like about the guy that makes him special in each case. So give me one guy, and then I'll go one guy.
Sure. So I'm not even putting them in order like my 11th guy or 12th guy. I just want to throw out a name that's interesting to me, and that's Torrey Horton from Colorado State. 6'2", 196. So he's got that height to him, and he ran a 4.41. He's a really good player, and he ran that 4.41 after he had only been cleared to run for like 2 or 3 weeks. That was directly from Daniel Jeremiah at the combine. I had to put that in my notes. So the guy went out and competed, was just cleared to run, goes out and runs a 40, burns a 4.41. The thing that makes his evaluation tough is he called 1 million uncontested drag routes. Is in my notes. Nice athletic qualities with burst, hand-eye coordination, body control. He could use to add some strength. He's 6'2", 196. But I actually view that as a plus. Get him in the NFL weight room. He can add some play strength. But hard to get a feel on his ability to run routes. He also has punt return experience. So if you're looking at a day 3 guy who might drop because he missed some time, but has some return experience, maybe he wins the punt returner job. You put some weight on him, and he could really turn into something. I like his upside, and I have him as like a draft target on day 3. So I really like Torrey Horton.
I'm with you on there. He's number 18, I think, among my guys. So 18 or 19. My first guy is Isaac TeSlaa of Arkansas. Now,
nice.
They pronounce it Tesla a lot, but I think it really is TeSlaa. And anyway, he extraordinary combine testing. He's 6'4", 217, 440, 340. 5 years in college makes him 23 in February already. Absurd alien-like, freakish athletic profile for his size, and he's hardly had any testing. So hardly had any targets, rather. So this last year, he has incredible metrics, but it's not quite 50 targets. So what I did is I combined his 23 and 24. Still looks good, but not as good. And the thing that stands out, I said we were only going to do one thing per player. We've already gotten away into the big scouting reports. I want to stay to one. Unbelievable at getting the football wherever it is thrown. It did not matter where it was thrown. The aggregate Arkansas quarterback was at a 92.3 quarterback rating. It was 146.5 throwing to him. And you can see it on the field. I mean, he's double covered a lot of the time. He's single covered, makes his money between the numbers, effectively plays like a tight end. If I had to say the player he reminds me of most in this draft in terms of play style and comportment on field as well, it's Gunnar Helm, the Texas tight end.
Right.
Texas tight end, right? Gunnar?
Yep.
Yeah, Texas, yeah. So he's really the guy. Every single first down, he's making a motion as if it's a first down. So there's a little bit of maturity issue maybe there, but it's okay. It's excitement, and he works like hell to go get the football wherever it's thrown. Really impressed.
Love him. He made my board, even though, like you said, 62 catches in 2 years. So like, there's not a lot to go off of.
The other guy getting him.
Oh, where would I be? Hey, I don't know where he's going to go in this draft. I had 24. I only have 24 receivers listed, and he was number 22. But if you told me that, like a lot of the, it's a wide receiver, so a lot of them are going to go. So even if you're talking about 5th round, and we've already addressed what we need to address, I'd be perfectly fine, because something tells me, Ken, with his profile, he's going to be good on special teams too. Like he could be a gunner. The last guy I want to mention is Jack Besh's teammate Savion Williams. We said we'd talk about him, so I'll bring him up. 6'4", 222, 32.5-inch arms. And he ran into 4.4s, a 4.48. I would just say this guy, when I first watched him, Ken, I was wondering why he was so low. I thought he could be a potential first-round pick. And then I saw drops, and then I saw another drop, and then I saw another drop. And then when I went to his profile, it's an 11% drop rate. But the other thing to say, He could run the whole route tree. He could be, his upside is huge. He just, like, to me, it's a hand-eye coordination thing with him, something that I don't think can be fixed. But he's also could be a Laviska Shenault for you on the gadget touches. He's that good with the ball in his hand.
Okay, and he's the guy who is probably the most extreme category by category across the board. The drops you mentioned, his yards per target were bad for an NFL prospect at 7.4. His ADOT was really short, so it's a lot of uncontested throws, and he still doesn't have particularly good statistics. QBR was 112.1. The TCU quarterbacks were 102.7, but he is also himself a Wildcat QB runner on a high number of plays and is very effective at it. And including that 102.7 aggregate quarterback rating includes 136.8 from him.
Yeah, he made one. Yeah, he got one.
3 out of 3 throws he made. But he reportedly can squat 600 pounds and bench 355.
Didn't hear that. That's beautiful.
He is a freakish athlete, and he's the best contested catch receiver in the entire class. 27 out of 36 career and 8 out of 9 in 2024.
So he just drops the easy ones. That's what
just drops easy ones.
Like a wide open deep ball just laid in there like a pillow and for a touchdown. It is so frustrating. Because when I see drop rates, you know how I am with PFF and stuff. I'm like, those are subjective. Let me check. And the drops are real. And I'm like, look, I'm looking for hands. I can't do it if I'm the Ravens. But, man, he's got some upside to him, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I don't think he fits the Ravens because I think the Wildcat QB value he brings has to be a high percentage of whoever drafts him the highest. And I don't think the Ravens want to take the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands. And so you lose that value effectively. You can occasionally run a Wildcat play with Derrick Henry. I really don't even like those. I think the advantage is you have is the mesh point that you lose that.
That's right.
I think we got to talk about Xavier Restrepo because everybody wants to hear a little bit about him. Slow as hell, it still gets unbelievable separation. Has a weird thing going on with his face that you may have noticed. There's a great explanation from his mother about why that occurs. I don't know if you've seen it. He's kind of this natural smirk on his face. He had a
is it nervous condition?
No, there actually was damage done at birth with forceps, and they pulled him out and they had some sort of a vascular what do they call it, deformity created, and then when he gets real excited and when he's playing football, it puffs up. And so, interview after the game, maybe one side of his face looks much larger than the other. So it's a weird thing. But let's talk about it. As a receiver, he's outstanding yards per target. Drop percentage is 2.8. Quarterback rating 141.9. Now, that is with Cam Ward, 117.7 overall throwing to him. But it's still great. Yards per route run of 2.47 and a yak per reception of 7.3. Returned 13 punts in college. The problem is he ran a 4.83 pro day 40.
Right.
Take that for what it is. He claimed he had some sort of a hamstring injury. He doesn't look slow on tape. Very sudden athlete, and he's at 5'10", 209, very compactly built. He's kind of like trying to tackle a running back once you get there.
I did not see play speed from him in NFL plus play speed. In the 4.4s, but I don't see he's not 4.8 either. What I liked about Restrepo is ball player, high football IQ with and without the ball, and with him playing with Cam Ward and the extending of the plays, he got to showcase that, and of course here in Baltimore that would work.
Yeah, I don't like I couldn't see going for him in 91. I think he's a kind of receiver. If the Ravens want to use one of those 2 4th-round picks on him, and they really like what he brings to the field, I trust him.
Yeah, hey, high IQ, space and awareness and zone, so he can find the open spaces. And like you said, or like I said, he's used to working with Cam Ward and, being very productive, being the go-to guy. And, in the style of offense, we're the quarterback who can extend plays.
Yeah. All right. So much fun doing this.
Yeah, man.
Jason. I get to be on your show on Monday night. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm sure we'll have another good discussion there. Tell folks where they can find your work online.
Yeah, Huddle It Up Films. I almost forgot to say the first show, but we're doing live shows every Monday night, so you can feel free to go back and click on my live tab and go back and watch them. Did one this evening, and Ken's going to be coming on next week. And then, of course, I'll be doing stuff on draft day. But you can find my big board. If you're fans of Ken McCusick, you're going to be watching. That's fine. You can still have my big board pulled up too, as Ken's got his list, and to do your scouting and your preferences off of both, and see where we agree and diverge on some prospects. But that's on my Twitter, and it's all over my YouTube as well. So feel free to follow me on Twitter as well, on X, and have some good discussions in there. But really appreciate all the support, and this one was really fun, Ken. We did too much agreeing though.
Yeah, it sometimes happens. Honestly, this is the first show of all the ones we've done, and there's only one to go left. We've got the edge left, where we've had this much agreement. Every other one has been massively different, but it's always fun. It's great to discuss it back and forth, and even you end up being a lumper and a splitter, and it ends up being the small differences between us we can have a whole discussion about, and then there's the Ravens and how they're going to use them, and all of a sudden 2 hours and 24 minutes as we stand right now.
Yeah, I loved our discussion on Jalen Noel in the first show. If that's the selling point to me to go back and listen to that, is Ken and I have the same scouting report on, think the same things. I think he's a great fit. Ken's not as high on the fit, and that's the difference in the ranking. So a lot of good stuff in this show, Ken.
We have both had him at number 10 anyway in the end.
No, I have him all the way up at 6. I think.
Okay, no, then
I like
9
that,
and 6 or something.
Right,
outstanding stuff. Other folks out there, please join us on draft night. Either show, honestly. If you want to watch Jason's show, go ahead. If you want to watch my show, catch the stream and listen to the other one at your leisure. And we have a great interactive way of doing it this year. A whole lot of metrics we're going to be showing on screen that we've prepped, in particular for the wide receivers and corners that'll be ready to go as these people get pulled off, as these players get pulled off the board. So we'll have nice, fun things to do. Really looking for people in the stream who want to participate. Every year, I pull somebody out of the stream to be a panelist and jump right in and do more conversations. If you want that, hit me up with a DM on Twitter. Jason, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I appreciate y'all.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.